Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
What up? Welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast. We got Wags here. I'm Dane. So honored to be here talking another Packers preview. 49ers coming to town at Lambeau Field, but it would almost be foolish, Wags, to not just touch on Packers beat the Bears 11 in a row. Carl Brooks, our boy, throws his hand up, gets a hand on it. Last second, Packers win. If you're listening to this podcast, you already know what happened. But holy smokes, Wags, what a difference one block field goal makes about how we're feeling. It's a big difference being 7-3 or 6-4, especially in this division. So how are you doing? How are you feeling? And are we going to ride the wave heading in to this week against the Niners on this high note, or how are you feeling tonight?
Dean, I'm doing great, man. We put one in the win column, and we'll just remember a block and nothing else about that game because the Packers, we said it last week, have been fortunate in some close games here in the last month, and just add this one to it. You know what, though? I don't care what anyone says. You can win ugly, but a win is a win in this league. And it was a key one. We were 0-2 in the division going into that game. And I'll tell you what, Bears, I think, played a lot better than they had in previous weeks. Looks like Caleb Williams was a lot more comfortable with the new offensive coordinator calling plays. And I don't know if the Packers were completely prepared for what they saw. Certainly, I think if they had game film, those quick passes and everything, they could be effective. But generally speaking, I think the Packers probably would have performed a little bit better had they known what to expect. But nonetheless, give the Bears credit, give the Packers credit for getting a win any way they can. And as you said, Matt LaFleur, 11-0 against the Bears. I'm not going to apologize. The Packers got the win, needed the division win, needed to keep pace with the Vikings and Lions are ahead of them in the division. And certainly it gave them a much clearer path. That schedule started to get harder starting this week.
It's an incredible feat to go 11-0 against any team in this league. I mean, it is remarkable that LaFleur has not lost in his entire tenure. The history of this podcast, Matt LaFleur has never lost. We've never talked about the Packers losing to the Bears, and we've been doing this thing for 6 years. So it's an incredible, incredible thing. Now we almost get the 180 version of this, Wags, which is we're facing a team that has been our Achilles heel, the San Francisco 49ers. They've knocked us out of the playoffs, 3 times in Matt LaFleur's tenure. We've had difficulty with them previous to that. They're a good ball team every year. This year, they're 5-5, but they're sneaky good, I think. They're a dangerous football team out there in San Francisco. So we invite them out here. It's an afternoon game this coming Sunday. And Wags, maybe we start a little bit with this injury report. The big news, I think, coming out of Green Bay today, and folks, we're recording on Thursday evening, is the Jaire Alexander injury. Jaire dropped out of the Bears game after 10 snaps, and it sounds like he re-aggravated a PCL injury. Timetable TBD. So that's a big one. And Cooper, the emerging young star linebacker in his first year here in Green Bay with a hamstring injury, and unclear if he'll be able to go on Sunday, but not practicing today. That's never a good sign on Thursday. So those are the two that pop right off to me, Wags. The rest of the injury report looks fairly clean, but how are you looking at that? And then, of course, on the other side of the coin with the San Francisco 49ers having some potential injuries, concerns of their own.
Well, I think Jaire's realistically headed towards the IR, even if it is short-term IR. We'll see. I don't have any firsthand information on that, but given that he came back re-aggravated, he had missed a couple of games before, and then also the bye. and that wasn't enough to avoid re-aggravating the injury. I think they shut him down for a while. Again, no inside information, but that's just my gut feeling here. So that's going to be a real loss. I think cornerback play has been a little disappointing so far this year. Overall, I think the safeties have been playing excellent football on the back end. The corner position has been kind of up and down, to be honest with you, Dane. And I don't know that anybody had real high hopes for Eric Stokes coming off a couple injury-riddled seasons. But Carrington Valentine hasn't quite looked like the player he was as a rookie. I'm hoping he can turn it on here down the stretch because it looks like he's going to get more opportunities to be out there. We've seen a lot more Javon Bullard in the slot as Evan Williams came back healthy. So that's a welcome development. And Keijon Nixon has been really good at times, and at times has seemed like the weak link in the secondary, but that's been kind of the epitome of K9's tenure as a defensive player, at least with Green Bay. So not getting down on these guys. It's just the reality of what we're seeing performance-wise out there on the field. So that's a big injury for the Packers. Say what you will about Jair and his contributions the last couple of seasons. So hopefully he gets the time off he needs to get fully healthy. And if he's positioned to come back healthy in the stretch run, hopefully a little earlier than he did last year. He wasn't really fully healthy and came back just for the playoff game. And I don't think he was ready for that. I think I'm sorry, I'm thinking of 2 years ago now, not last year, but I think Jair, hopefully he can get a couple games under his belt and get healthy before the end of the season, going into the playoffs. But Dane, yeah, on the 49ers side, I'm just going to comment and then I'll turn it back over to you. Looks like Brock Purdy exited practice today, maybe either a new or re-aggravation of the shoulder that's been bothering him from early in the season. And then Nick Bosa has not been practicing, exited the game early last Sunday. So that's the biggest headline loss to me. On the flip side, George Kittle looks like he's getting healthy and returning from an injury. And then, of course, a big one, even though he was back last week, is Christian McCaffrey. So he'll be back, second game back after being on the IR for most of the first half of the season. So between those guys, and then we'll have to see on Trent Williams. He's been out of practice the last couple of days as well. So big names either returning or potentially could be down to be watching on the 49ers side as well.
Yeah, it's the Purdy injury could be particularly, I think, challenging for the 49ers. Obviously, quarterback situation. Brandon Allen is the backup quarterback there, but anytime quarterback goes down with any kind of injury or gets pulled from practice early, maybe it's precautionary, but when it's a shoulder injury as a quarterback, you just never know what's going to go on there. I am actually circling the injury to Trent Williams. I mean, he is one of the best left tackles in the league, has been for a number of years, Wags. And I know he's a veteran and probably doesn't need much rest, right? Or doesn't need much practice time. And is one of those guys that can just go if he can go. But anytime guys aren't practicing on Thursday, that is always something that we're used to seeing kind of, you flag that, right? So even if he's able to go and maybe isn't 100%, that's something that's going to be a challenge, especially if you have a quarterback that's already not feeling, particularly strong there. And then the Bosa injury completely shapes or changes the defense, I think, for the 49ers if he's unable to go. But it just remains to be seen what happens there. Wags, offensively for the 49ers and this Packers defense, I mean, let's get right into this situation here. I mean, yes, the quarterback's a little banged up. yes, the left tackle, but you said Kittle's coming back. And this is a 49ers team that has a lot of firepower, even without Brandon Ayuk, who is on the injured reserve list. They got Christian McCaffrey back, 2 weeks ago? And he hasn't gotten in the end zone yet, but he's had over 100 all-purpose yards in both games already this season that he's been able to perform at. Deebo Samuel Sr. has always been somebody that can gut you. And then really the emergence, I would say, of Jennings on the outside there has been another guy for them. He's, by last I checked, leading the team in yardage as a wide receiver. So he's somebody that is really emerging at the wide receiver position. So this is a team that can do a lot of damage to you. And heck, even their fullback is somebody that can do some damage there. So this is a 49ers team that we know well. Yes, some of the faces have changed, but some of these guys remain the same. So we saw some good from the Packers defense last week. We saw some not so good from the Packers defense this week, but starting right away, I've got to think that we are circling McCaffrey as the guy to shut down anyway, anyhow. And it tells me I think Quay Walker needs to have a much better performance than he just did against Chicago Bears for the Packers to have a chance in this one against this offense. But what say you? I turn it over to you. I mentioned a lot of guys for this 49ers offense, but who's the guys that concern you most from this Niners power attack? And do we see an avenue, or what do you think the Packers strategies are to maybe mitigate some of this Niners firepower?
Yeah, well, it starts with Christian McCaffrey. Certainly, this is a 49ers offense that has been very efficient this year, kind of quietly. So, averaging 8.5 yards per pass attempt. And even without McCaffrey, both in the pass game and in the rush game, they're averaging 5 yards per rush attempt. So, they're able to move the chains a lot on first and second down, avoid third down situations. They're able to get up and down the field. They've protected quarterback pretty well. They're in the top 10 in least sacks allowed. And then from turnover perspective, not great, not terrible. A few less interceptions and fumbles than the Packers have had offensively. Where the 49ers have really struggled is getting those drives and converting them into points. One thing that they've really struggled with all year is their kicking game. And it's like they're having the year this year that the Packers had last year with their kickers. And so you can imagine that for 49ers fans, that's extremely frustrating. They had a win a couple of weeks ago over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where their kicker missed 3 field goals in a 3-point game that they won in overtime. And so it's things like that can make a huge difference when you're playing teams. And certainly we expect and hope that this is a very competitive game this week, and that hopefully the Packers play well and they take care of business. But in a highly competitive, close matchup, those points can just make such a difference. So the Packers are going to have to, be mindful, certainly, of McCaffrey, try to limit the big plays. They've had some rough games against premier running backs so far this year. They've been pretty good in some matchups, but just thinking, like against the Lions, back against the Texans, Joe Mixon just absolutely gashed the Packers. So they haven't necessarily been real good against the run. Saquon Barkley in week 1. Yeah, I know that was to service Brazil, etc. But nonetheless, premier running backs against this Packer defense have kind of found their way and seem to find a rhythm. So it's from that perspective, it's going to take all 11 in order to really be able to, I think, slow down this 49er rush attack, because everything's predicated on that. Brock Purdy just loves to play action. That's Kyle Shanahan's bread and butter. And so it's gonna take like you said, a much better performance from Quay Walker, but it's going to be the guys up front, and it's going to be everyone else having to come up and contribute, fill those gaps. We're going to have to be really solid on the boundary against the rushing attack, and frankly, after what they did against the Bears and what's on film now, I'm worried about what the 49ers might try to do with Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, on the boundaries and on the edges of the short passing game. That's something that 49ers have always done very well. So if they're able to have success out there, that's another version of a running game. And then you also got to deal with trying to figure out Christian McCaffrey. That's a whole other animal than what we saw last week. And then, by the way, play action, George Kittle can just absolutely tear you apart over the middle. So there's a lot of complexity, a lot of components here that the Packer defense is going to have to be mindful of and aware of this week.
Wags, that's really good insight. Two defenders I want to point out on the Packers side of things here, maybe kind of going different directions stock-wise as of, this past week. I thought Rashawn Gary had 5 pressures. He's playing more actually on the side that Preston Smith had been playing on. I don't know if folks noticed that, but with the trade with Preston Smith, Barre gets the start, but he and Rashawn Gary kind of flip sides. And I was looking at the data. I don't have the data in front of me, but Rashawn Gary from the right side, which is the side that he switched to, has historically had a ton more success in rushing the passer. And now he's working on that. And lo and behold, he had 5 rushes last week. He had that big play late in the fourth quarter. And it feels like it's starting to come together here after a really rough start to the year. And that, yes, it's one game, but we're seeing some signs that I think that, we're seeing Rashawn. On the other side of things, Kenny Clark shut out from the scoreboard yet again last week. No tackles, no stats. And stats never say the whole story at all when you're talking defensive line. But he largely just didn't have a very good performance. And he hasn't been the standout Kenny Clark that I think we've come to expect. Because Kenny's always had a few weeks where maybe he gets quiet, but then he has like a big game. He hasn't had that big game yet this season. So how concerned should we be about Kenny Clark, not only this week, but for the rest of the year, Wags? And it's not just Kenny Clark, right? The defensive line and maybe this pass rush overall hasn't been quite what I think we had anticipated or hoped for. But Kenny Clark signing that 3rd contract, being really that leader of the defensive line, I guess I do put a little bit more on his shoulders from an expectation standpoint. So how do you feel about the Kenny Clark situation right now? And, how do the Packers get him to be in the right position to maybe help stop McCaffrey this week?
That's a great question, Dane. Honestly, it would be great to see Kenny Clark start to have some more impactful performances. But I'll tell you what, I haven't really thought about it that much. And you know why? Because we've got other guys that have been stepping up on that interior defensive line. Unlike what we've had in past seasons where if Kenny Clark isn't doing it all, Packers defensive line could still get shredded sometimes, even when he was trying to do it all. From what we've seen from Devontae Wyatt, at times, TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks has come in and had some real impactful plays. Obviously, not even just in the special teams with the block last week at the end, but is part of the rotational defensive line. So it's really good to see that we're getting impact and performance across the board. And I'll tell you what, the more those guys perform, the more defenses are going to have to pick their poison and reconsider whether they can always be double teaming Kenny Clark, which is what they're often doing. And that's been the game plan for years. And granted, past seasons, Kenny Clark has been able to find ways to destroy double teams, and maybe he's not doing that as much this year, but we've got more horses to be able to make defenses pay when they're doing that. So my concern level is a little bit lower. That's what's supposed to happen when defenses put that much focus and attention on a singular guy on that part of the field. And so as long as that continues and we're getting, impactful contributions from some of those other guys. If we start to see Rashawn Gary play at another level, and that's rising tides with our pass rushers on the outside, I'll tell you what, I think Kenny Clark's going to get his opportunities because all of those pieces come together, and certainly that puts a lot more stress and pressure on opposing offensive lines.
I appreciate that a ton. The other thing I wanted to ask you about on the defensive side is, with the news of Cooper, I think less likely he's able to go this week with the hamstring. I assume it's going to be obviously Quay Walker, and then Isaiah McDuffie will probably be there. But also, I wonder if Tyron Hopper has an opportunity to play some snaps this week, the third round pick, because I feel like, that third linebacker coming in is going to be Eric Wilson when the Packers go 4-3. But in some of those scenarios where they're playing more nickel, it'll be Quay Walker. And next to him, I don't know if it's going to be Wilson or it might be a little bit Tyron Hopper, but it's just, circling that, it's a darn shame. Cooper, I think, has had some really good games and can really run sideline to sideline. So that's going to be a tough one, I think, this week. So just do you see Isaiah McDuffie kind of being that number 2, or do you think the Packers rotate guys in next to Quay Walker this week?
Yeah, I think it depends what personnel groups the 49ers are deploying. If they're in a lot of 11 or 12 personnel, they're trying to get extra size and running football. They're going to have that extra linebacker out there. We've seen how exploited the Packer defense was in years past when they went with a light box against this 49er offense. Kyle Shanahan just toyed with the Packers defense and just rushed the ball down our throats. So we're going to have to make sure that we have the right matchups depending on the personnel. I think we need to be careful though, because they could come out with some other personnel packages that force the Packers to be into more of that nickel set. And that's what the 49ers really love to run against in this matchup. So it's going to be an interesting chess match. And it's not Joe Barry's defense anymore. So I'm really anxious to see what Jeff Hafley dials up. But certainly, as you said, getting back to your question on the linebackers, we're going to have, whether it's Wilson, Hopper, someone's going to have to step up because I don't expect Cooper to play unless this injury is not as bad as what seems like. You don't exit a practice on Thursday with a new hamstring injury and turn around and play on Sunday. I just don't think that's happening. That's not a realistic expectation. So I very much doubt we're going to see Cooper on Sunday. So yeah, it's going to have to be one of those other guys stepping up in a big way.
Wags, before we flip over to the offensive side, I want to give you some green and gold flowers. You mentioned when Preston Smith was traded, you thought that Brenton Cox would have an extended opportunity, and boy, did he ever, and boy, did he make an impact. So that's one thing that you said it, you gave that shout out last week, and had the sack, he had a good tackle for loss. He just looked really instinctive there. So I expect him to get more snaps. And I see Lee in the chat, Lee86. I'm wondering about Evan Williams and wondering if we think he's going to be a factor. And my short answer, Lee, is he's going to have to be. There's too many weapons in this Niners offense. And I think the Packers are going to largely have to pick their poison, but also they're going to have to win some one-on-one matchups. And that might mean Evan getting out there and covering Kittle. It might be somebody getting one-on-one with McCaffrey and just winning on some of those routes. And that's a really tall order. Now it can be done. The 49ers are 5-5, but boy, they feel like they're a bit of a sleeping giant right now, just based on how explosive they are. Looking at some of the metrics, it looks like they could be much better than that. So my short answer is that Williams is going to have to, and I think he's up to the challenge, but it's going to be important that he and really his teammates are on their A game this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move over to the Packer offense against this 49er defense. And Dane, I'll let you lay out the scouting report, and let's dial up some key matchups that you're looking at in this one.
Well, boy, Wags. I mean, right away, it really is. I said it earlier. It's about Joey Bosa, or excuse me, Nick Bosa. If Bosa's able to go, it totally shifts their defense. They become a much more dangerous defense against the pass. But he is questionable, and I really do believe he's going to be one of those game time decisions. If he's unable to go, Packers can spend a lot more time and energy on Leonard Floyd, who's the rusher on the other side of things. Where they get dangerous, as any team is you can be good, but if the guy across from you is great, it makes you an awful lot better. But if it's Leonard Floyd as the pass rusher one, he's good. But I think that the Packers will have their opportunity to get two hats on him and take care of a lot of the rest of the line. That's not to say that the Niners don't have other guys that can make plays. They do at that level, but really it does start and end with Bosa as far as I'm concerned from the games that I've watched. But this is a Packers offensive line, Wags, that has been exceedingly good at pass protecting for their quarterbacks this year. Incredibly well. Rasheed Walker on the left side had some troubles with the penalties early in the year, but Wags, holy smokes. I was looking at some statistics from earlier this week. Offensive tackles with a minimum of 6 snaps. He has like 1 hurry against him. He's in the top 4 in all of football at the tackle position. I mean, he's played really good ball. Zach Tom, another guy. I mean, the Packers are fortunate. They've got 2 tackles that are men out there playing ball, and then their interior has been tremendous as well. So this is an offensive line where it's been a strength of the team, and it's been one that's been, and I don't want to jinx ourselves, but it's been a durable offensive line. There's been some switch up. Myers missed a game, right? But largely speaking, this is an offensive line that's been really intact, of course, with the absence of Jordan Morgan, who had been working his way in with Sean Ryan. But really, those other 5 guys have been out there an awful ton, right? So it starts up front, I think, this week with the Packers. The 49ers do have some very dangerous pieces defensively. They always do. Fred Warner, middle linebacker, probably the best middle linebacker, if not one of the top 2 or 3 in football. And then I've got to also highlight Travarius Ward. He's really an up-and-coming corner, their left cornerback. Those are guys that all can really play ball. They're kind of like that next echelon. But Wags, there's also some players that we're very familiar with that are playing a lot of snaps for the 49ers. And these are the guys that I think that the Green Bay Packers this week can really exploit. The first one, Devondre Campbell, former all-pro linebacker in Green Bay. He has had a really difficult time in San Francisco this year. He's been very exploitable. So he's one guy that I'm circling where I think that the Packers can isolate somebody like a Josh Jacobs or a Tucker Kraft against him in coverage. He's going to have a lot of difficulty, I think, matching up against those kind of guys in the Packers offensively. And the other guy is Isaac Yiadom. Folks remember him. He was a cornerback. He played a ton of special team snaps for the Packers. And whenever he had an opportunity on the defensive side of the ball, really struggled. Folks, he is the starting right cornerback for the San Francisco 49ers this week coming into Green Bay. So he's another guy that I just think that the Packers can really get some matchups with and beat consistently with the weapons that the Packers have. So those are the 2 guys that I'm circling, Wags, from the 49ers. And those I think are the keys to success for the Packers. The 49ers defense can do a lot, but if they are shorthanded Bosa, it really it behooves the Packers, I think, this offensive line to give Jordan Love time. And oh yes, Jordan Love last week, he had the one interception where the ball sailed, but I thought he looked way healthier. He was willing to use his legs way more than he has in previous weeks. We saw him be way more aggressive with some throws. He hit on balls downfield that maybe he hadn't hit on in previous weeks. So I was really excited to see the progression from Jordan Love. And this is a week where he needs to take care of the ball extra carefully. And this is a week where I think this Packers offense can attack the 49ers defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. And this 49ers defense is pretty good across the board. I think Fred Warner is someone that covers a ton of ground, and but they've got our old friend Devondre Campbell out there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Packers try to exploit matchups. I would really like to see this week to get Dontavian Wicks more involved. Last week, I said I wanted to see Jaden Reed get more involved. They did get him more involved early and then seemed to go away from him, which I don't quite understand. But this offense, to the Bears' credit, didn't get very many possessions in the game last week. So I think it was harder to get that rhythm going, but Packers need to deal better with that and situational football and just be better at executing when they get the opportunities. But I'll tell you what, Dontavian Wicks has been quiet for far too long. We got the most contributions last week came from Christian Watson. That was your pick. So returning the flowers right back to you, Dane. And I realize that we've said, and it can be kind of cliche, that with this pass catching group that the Packers have, any one of these guys can step up any week. But the fact of the matter is, I would just like to see more consistent touches given to Christian Watson, given to Dontavian Wicks, and especially given to Jaden Reed in this offense. And frankly, I was not a fan of the game that Coach LaFleur called last week. I thought it was one of the poorest games he's coached in a long time. Maybe that's a little harsh, but just situationally, I didn't like some of the decisions that he made in the second half, going for it on 4th down and 6. Yeah, I get it. You're down. It seems like it was an overcorrection from when they were in the NFC Championship game against the Bucs, and everybody said, "Why didn't you go for the touchdown?" All of these situations are different. There was more time on the clock. They were just not doing anything with the 3 plays before that. They were going backwards. We've talked about this before, Dane. Sometimes you just have to know when to fold it, take the points, and move on, and go out, make a stop, and live for the next series, live for the next play. And I just didn't see that a lot last week. So one of the things I've been a little bit critical of is the offense in the red zone, and statistically they've been terrible this year, which makes no sense considering all the talent the Packers have and the creativity of Matt LaFleur as an offensive mind and play caller. Overall, he's a great play caller, and we've seen some amazing games. Last week just was not one of them. So I'm hoping that they can get back to figuring some things out, be a little bit more efficient on 1st and 2nd down. If you pass on 1st down and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you need to run the ball for 3 yards on 2nd down and set up a third and long. It's just, let's be a little bit more aggressive. Let's be a little bit more unpredictable, and let's give Jordan Love more bullets to go out there and fire. And I think we'll get more consistent success from this offense. That said, Dane, I asked for Jordan Love to have a cleaner game, no interceptions last week. Didn't quite do it. But what did you see? Was there progression in his decision making overall last week? And do you think maybe this is a week that he can start to put it all together and maybe hit that gear like he did in the second half of last season?
Yeah, I mean, I thought last week, maybe not statistically, I'd have to go back and look at his stats, but he looked really comfortable, Wags, I thought, throughout the game. I thought he had really good pocket feel too. There were a couple plays where he kind of stepped up into the pocket. He trusts his blockers, but he just looked more like Jordan Love second half of last year in a lot of different circumstances. He looked calm. He looked composed. Yeah, he threw that interception. It sailed, but it was the right read. It wasn't an odd read. If anything, maybe the biggest criticism from me isn't that interception. It might be that double coverage catch to Christian Watson that could have gone bad, but it went well. That's one where I went, oh, no. Yes, right. It was one of those plays from Jordan Love, but largely I did think he was seeing the field really well. I think he maybe missed on one check down in his progression. I think Kraft was open on one and he went the different direction. These are nitpicky things as far as I'm concerned, but overall, good command of the offense. Definitely looked more comfortable with his legs. Felt like he was able to move around in the pocket, I thought, quite a bit more, and had trust in his receivers. And honestly, I was glad to see Christian Watson, Wags, have the game he had and have the opportunities, because I do think he's a guy that can stretch the field and do a lot of things. This week, Wag, something I circled and I wanted to mention to you, because you are and have been the Jaden Reed guy since the day he was drafting Green Bay. Last week, the Seattle Seahawks exploited the 49ers in the slot. Their slot receiver had 10 receptions. I think that that's something that we can totally exploit. So I know you mentioned the consistency, but could this be a week where maybe Jaden Reed is the hot hand based on what the 49ers gave up to Seattle last week?
I mean, I would like to think so, but for whatever reason, that's been a struggle for, I think, the Packers, where it's almost like they have some good plays, some exploiting some matchups, and then they're like, oh, okay, we've got to put that away for a while and go try something else, or we've got to like spread this out and get some other guys involved, or now it's the series where we're gonna try to run on first and second down and force Jordan Love to convert some third downs, and if he doesn't, we're punting. And it's just head scratching sometimes. And again, I'm sorry if I'm being a little negative, but on the play calling, but honestly, like you've got some horses in this offense. Let them run loose. I mean, feed them the football. Be aggressive on first down. Be aggressive on second down. And I'm not saying just start chalking the ball all over the field and don't give the ball to Josh Jacobs. That's a big part of this offense. So it's just about balance and finding opportunities to have better play calls and allow these guys to play more aggressively. I mean, heck, Jordan is so well protected. You said it earlier. This offensive line has been doing such a phenomenal job. What's really the difference to me is I would rather throw the ball on second and third down and give him multiple opportunities to get the first down than run the ball on second down and then he only has one opportunity and it's a coin flip to get that first down. So, it's just things like that I think I just wish we would feed that hot hand, and it just doesn't seem like that's been a component of this offense under Coach LaFleur. We don't typically see guys get 7, 8, 10 plus, receptions, let alone targets in a game. But yeah, this would be the week, Dane. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Dobbs, let them loose. I think this 49er run defense is going to be hard to run against, even with Bosa out potentially. So I think they're well protected. Let's try to attack them through the air. I think that's where you're going to find the success.
I love it. Good game plan here. Wayne said in the chat, that's what the Packers got to do, expose the 49ers weaknesses. And agreed, right? I think that's right. And I do think through the air, there's some real mismatches in the secondary and in that second level for the Niners. Wags, anything else offensively you want to touch on from the Packers? I do want to shout out just Josh Jacobs' 50 career touchdowns. He has been a tremendous Packer. He's been a great addition from Goody. He's been everything we could have hoped for. So I just want to highlight that because he has been just so darn good this year for the Packers. But anything else this week specific to the Packers 49ers that you want to highlight?
No, I mean, again, I just want to see a cleaner game. It's been nice to see the Packers, for the most part, have cleaned up a lot of penalties, not all. I mean, you're going to get penalties every game. I get that, but not quite to the extent that they were early in the season. But look, this offense is way too good to not be more efficient and not be putting up more points and not to be more successful in the red zone. And they continue to shoot themselves to the foot. And they're not going to win this game this week. if they shoot themselves in the foot on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to have to play better. I know the 49ers are a 5-5 team. Maybe their offense is not going to be all that great if they're dealing with some of those injuries that we talked about earlier. It doesn't matter. This Packer offense is way too talented to continue to not play. I mean, they're actually a pretty good offense. So I don't, again, I know I'm sounding a little negative tonight, but this should be a top 5 offense in the league, and they're not playing at that level right now. So I don't want to make any more excuses. We're 10 games into the season. They kind of are who they are at this point. So now it's time to start putting it together and play at a level that we expect. And because right now, this is a Packer team that, yeah, they're 7-3, but they've got a lot of coin flip games. They're not playing all that much better than the Packer team that was 3-6 last year, as far as I'm concerned. That might be, people might disagree with that statement, but they made 2 game-winning field goals and got very, very lucky last week. Just being realistic. So that's, 1, 2, 3 games that they easily could have lost. And they're sitting at 7-3. I'm very happy with where they are. But if they don't start playing better football, this isn't the contending team that we expected to see.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. And this is where the rubber meets the road for this Packers organization, this team, this season for the 2024-2025 team. We've seen it so many times, Wags. We've seen awesome Green Bay Packer teams regular season that kind of fizzle late in the year. We see teams that kind of find their way through the year. We see teams that are consistently good or maybe consistently bad throughout the year. This really is kind of, over the next few weeks, we will learn who this Green Bay Packer team is, and can they make the playoffs in a really competitive NFC North. And I'm excited to see it because I like that this is a Packers team that it wins close games, but now we need to put it together and beat really good teams. We've beaten teams that I think we should beat. We've had some troubles against teams that are probably potentially playoff teams, right? So we're kind of in that we're figuring it out phase, but this is, I agree completely with you. These are the weeks now we figure out what's going to happen for the remainder of the year. So Wags, is it X Factor time? I want to know what's up with some of these X Factors.
Yeah, I'm going to start on the defensive side of the ball. You were talking earlier about next man up and linebacker position. I'm going Eric Wilson as my defensive X Factor this week. We've seen Eric Wilson make some impactful plays on the defensive side of the ball at times this year. Kind of a journeyman, but seems to fit well in this Packer defense. And certainly maybe just from an intangible standpoint isn't going to stand out. I'm sorry, from a measurable standpoint as well. But dude just plays football, seems to make plays. And I think in the opportunities he has had, he stepped up. So there's no reason not to think that Eric Wilson's a guy that won't step up again this week if he gets more opportunities and Edwin Cooper is not out there. So for that reason, I'm going to say he's an X factor, and also for the fact that we need this linebacker core at the second level to play at a high level if we're going to have success in slowing down Christian McCaffrey in this 49er rush offense. So if Eric Wilson, if Quay Walker, if McDuffie are not minding their P's and Q's this week, this could be a long day at the office.
Yeah. Great selection. I'm going to kind of cheat this week. I think a little bit of my defensive X factor, because he's technically not a defender, but I think that it's going to be a game of field position. I was just looking. It's going to be 43 degrees around 3 o'clock, 41 degrees around 4 o'clock. It's going to be dark. It's Lambeau Field at night, 10-mile-per-hour winds. Packers are going to need to, probably, flip the field once or twice. It's going to be a close game. It's the Niners. We know how this goes. Wags, you and I have been to Packer 49er playoff games at Lambeau. They haven't turned out the way we've wanted them to. So we're going to need to win defensively. We're also going to need to win with field position to help the defense out. So this is the week, Wags. My defensive X factor, kind of a special teams X factor. It's our punter. It's Daniel Whelan. I think Danny's going to have to pin them down deep. He's been tremendous this year. I think Dan Whelan should earn a Pro Bowl nomination this season from the NFC. And I'll tell you what, I think this is a week where in the lights of Lambeau Field and kind of that colder weather against the Niners, Danny's going to be able to come up and pin them once or twice or 3 times. Just do what he needs to do. He's been tremendous all year. This is a week where, in these conditions, 49ers have had some trouble with their special teams. The Packers, this is a chance for the Packers to really exploit something against the Niners. We've had trouble special teams wise against the Niners over the years. Let's pay them the favor this week. Danny Whelan is going to be my X factor this week defensively because I do think that he's going to be a weapon against the Niners.
I love it, Dane. I love it. And certainly I think with the struggles that the 49ers have had with their special teams, not just in the kicking game, I think they're rated dead last in the league in special teams, or second to last, if not dead last at this point. So special teams could make a big difference in this game. So from an X factor standpoint, great selection. Offensive side of the ball, I already said it. I'm going to stick with what I said earlier. I'm not going to give a huge reason why. I said all the reasons. Dontavian Wicks is going to be my X factor this week. I think he's due is the main reason. I think he's a guy that can win some of these mismatches and has been quiet for a while. And frankly, I'd love to get him going. And it's just, we saw Christian Watson have a big week last week. We know what Jaden Reed can do. Romeo Dobbs had a really good stretch for a few weeks after he came back from his suspension. So we've gotten contributions from the other guys, and I think it's Dontavian Wicks' turn. We've talked about it coming into this season. This is an embarrassment of riches for pass catchers, and I think it's just going to put further stress. And maybe, just maybe, Dane, that's the component that gets the engine going and gets this offense just hitting another gear headed into the stretch run.
I really like that selection. I don't want to double you up, so I'm not going to. But I think that that's a really strong one, Wags. I love it. I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft because I think that we can exploit the heck out of Devondre Campbell. He's been really bad this season in coverage, and I just think that
you don't say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Kraft can cook. Kraft didn't have a catch last week. I don't believe if I go back in my memory book here, and I think that this week he can really stretch them and exploit them up the middle of the field a little bit there. So just Tucker Kraft. He's a big body. He's a guy that I think in the red zone is going to be dangerous, but also just moving the chains. I love your Dontavian Wicks selection. I really do. But I've got to go with Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker is going to torch them for a couple really big gains. Kittle's really good. Yards after the catch. Tucker Kraft is going to be really good with yards after the catch this week.
All right. I love it, Dane. Score predictions. I'll let you lead this off this time.
Yeah, I don't know how we get to this number exactly, but I do think the Packers are going to win and finally going to kind of pull the cheese off of our shoulder a little bit on this one against a 49ers team that's given us so many challenges over the years. I think the Packers put up a fair amount of points. Packers are going to put up 30. I think the 49ers are going to put up 26. It's going to be close. It's going to be a nail biter. It's going to be one of those games where we're, the cardiac pack and we're kind of freaking out, but Packers are going to win 30-26. They'll keep it close. And I think in the fourth quarter, Jordan Love's going to have an opportunity to go down and have a signature come from behind win. Packers win it.
I like it, Dane. I'm pretty close to you. Also pretty close to John. Says 31-10. Of course, John, we love it. Wayne in the Facebook chat says 34-31 Packers. So I'm kind of in the middle of all of you guys. I've got a 10-point Packer win in this one. I think this is going to be the Packers are due to just put together a really strong performance on both sides of the football and the special teams. This is a good 49ers team. I don't care what the record says. They're going to put up some points, but I think this Packer team figures some things out on the offensive side of football. I think the Packers, maybe Xavier McKinney had probably he didn't have a terrible game, but his worst game as a Packer, I think you said last week as well. I think he bounces back in a big way. Hopefully we can get back on the interception train this week. And I think this offense puts up some points as well. I've got 31-21 Packers taking care of business. And I think the 49ers miss a couple of field goals again. To give the Packers a little bit of additional breathing room. So maybe it's a closer than the score indicates type of game, but the Packers do a little bit more, I think, in the red zone and offensively this week than what people might expect against what's been a pretty good 49ers defense over the years, but they're not quite the same level defense they were in the last few seasons, especially if Bosa's not out there on Sunday. So I think what the 49ers do well doesn't necessarily play into the weaknesses of this Packer offense. So I think they can find some success this week and take care of business. So I've got Packers 31, 49ers 21. We're going to, for once, not have a nail biter and against a quality opponent. So Dane, what say you? Will you take that as a prediction as well?
I love that prediction. Wags, if my blood pressure and my heart rate, if my heart rate can just be normal for a few minutes during this game, I'm going to be really happy. I love that.
All right. I love it. Okay. So folks, I think that does it for tonight. Dane, I'd be remiss though, before we wrap up, you're going to be at the game this week. Yes. You're giving stuff away. So take a moment. What are you doing? We can find that info on social. How can you participate?
Yes, so excited, Wags, to be out there this week. So yes, I'm going to be heading to Lambeau Field on Sunday. Unfortunately, Wags is unable to join, but I'll be there, and it's going to be an awful lot of fun. We're actually going to be going to the Green Bay house. We'll be out there giving out a ton of Lombardi's Legends koozies to anybody who wants them. I've got a stack we're giving away. Go to our Instagram page. That's just at Lombardi's Legends. And if you go to that, you'll be able to see where we're going to be at. We'll be posting it on our stories. DM us if you want a koozie if you're at Lambeau Field. It's going to be a ton of fun. So, again, we're going to be at the Green Bay house on Sunday. Also just going to be hanging out around the stadium for a few hours before the game. So send us a DM. I'll get you a koozie. It's going to be fun.
All right. Wish I could be there, buddy, but it should be a blast. So, folks, if you're going to be there, whether you're going to the game or just going to hang out, hit up the socials and find Dane, come over and say hello. So, all right, that does it for us. As always, be legendary and go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack Go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will